The trickiest part of planning for retirement is that decisions you make today, sometimes really big decisions, will impact your future self for years to come, but you're making these decisions as who you are today. And subconsciously, we just always assume we'll be exactly like we are now. And that can be dangerous, and it can be costly. And we've been talking about that all month on the Retirement Answer Man show as it relates to Medicare. This is one that's a really good example. Oh, by the way, welcome to the show. My name is Roger Whitney. I'm your host. And this is a show dedicated to helping you not just survive retirement, but truly rock retirement. Make it an amazing retirement by making a lot of little decisions just a little bit better consistently. And throughout this month, as we've explored Medicare, we've seen how decisions on Part B, on Medigap policies, and the premium levels that we pay that seem to be in our interest today could potentially hurt us in the future, hurt that future self. And there is not a lot of clear answers when we think about the future. And so when we want to be a little bit more thoughtful about it, what can happen is, and I see it all the time, we can get paralyzed because we start thinking, well, what about this eventuality? Well, if that happens, then this is the right decision. But if that happens, that's the right decision. If this, that, and the other thing happens, the third decision is right. And then you can create all these possible scenarios in the future. And suddenly you get confused, you get worried, you get paralyzed, and you just sort of wing it. And there's a balance between winging it and being super detail oriented about it. There's a balance between those things where you can overanalyze things, but not analyze them enough to where how do we make a thoughtful decision knowing that we have very incomplete information, then live with it. And that's what we always try to strive for on the show. And that's what we strive for in Agile Retirement Management. And that's one reason why we value optionality or flexibility more than most processes, because we understand that there's so much about the future that's unknown. And so I think that's important to acknowledge, especially as we talk about Medicare, because we're really making decisions for our future self. Medicare is a really good example of that. And so we're going to finish up our Medicare series this week with Danielle about how do you make your Medicare decision. And what I thought I'd do is just share a little bit about where we're going with the show for the rest of the year, so you can have some insight, and maybe you have a question or experience you can share. So let me give you some happenings in the Retirement Answer Man ecosystem, so to speak. So for the rest of the year, in October, because we're coming up to October, the entire theme is unexpected retirement. The COVID disruption is causing a lot of forced retirements or repurposing careers, but it's also presenting a lot of buyouts and packages that are accelerating retirement plans that are already in place. So if you are being impacted by that, either you're being forced out and you have to decide, do I go back to work or do I just retire now? Or you're being given a package of some sort. How do you navigate that when all of this gets accelerated? We're going to focus on that all of October on the show. And we're actually going to have a webinar that I'll tell you about a little bit early next month, where we can noodle on all that together live. November is going to be 100% listener questions, your questions. And I'll tell you how to present your questions and some of your experiences. So it's all going to be about listeners, the questions they have, experiences that they want to share that may help someone else on their journey. Because collectively, we're a lot wiser than we are by ourselves. And we'll try to organize that for you. And then December, I think, is a really important theme, and that is the parent project. What do we do? What do we have to think about when we're helping manage our parents' life? The care for them, the safety for them, the finances for them, and ultimately their estates. You may have to dealing with a mom or a dad or both, that you're going to have to take over some of the reins for them as they age. And so we're going to spend the month talking about what things that might be coming, some experiences from people that have done it, my experiences, because I've had to deal with this as a professional anyway, so we can have some thoughtful what might be coming around the corner there. And then as an extra bonus, just so you know, January is going to be Retirement Plan Live, our live case study with a listener. We haven't decided what the profile of that listener is, but look for some more information on that in the event you want to raise your hand and be considered for that retirement planning case study. And you can always talk with me by going to rogerwhitney.com/Ask Roger. And there you can ask a question that we can try to use on the show, share an experience that you think might be helpful to someone. We had a few this month on sharing an experience on Medicare and their perspective based on what they've dealt with, because you can really help other people, and that's valuable. Or you can just give me feedback and say hi. All those emails come directly to me if you fill out that form or leave a recording, and I'll do my best to try to reply back, and if we can use them on the show, we will. Now, on the RRC front, the Rock Retirement Club, which you can learn about at rockretirementclub.com, that's our online community where a lot of very wise people are walking together. We're really excited because we just launched a planning tool that is included, a premium retirement planning tool that's included in our membership price. And the cool thing about that is, one is individuals can plan for their retirement on their own using the calculator. But two, we're using it collectively. Everybody in the club is using the same tool. So there's a lot of collective wisdom of how you do things, how you model things, and what does this mean? So we're excited about that. And then in addition, the module for the course is just about to be released, where we give you a tool to calculate, do I have enough? Which is getting close to the end of the masterclass before we go into deep dive. So that's exciting. But with all that happening on the show, we want to make sure we always serve you. So let's get to our main segment and talk with Danielle about how do you make a decision about Medicare? Here we are at the end of Medicare for now, because no doubt we'll have to revisit this. And we're so blessed to have Danielle from Boomer Benefits with us. She has a new book that just came out, The 10 Costly Medicare Mistakes You Can't Afford to Make. So I suggest picking that up. We'll have links to that in 6 Shot Saturday, but let's talk with Danielle about how to make a Medicare decision. So Danielle, I feel pretty honored that you're coming back on the show this week now that you are an internationally known bestseller, because your book is out. The 10 Costly Mistakes.
I'm trying to be like you. Trying to be like you.
You're so humble. You're so humble to allow me into your presence. So how does it feel to have your book out?
It's very exciting. It's been a year of hard work. As you know, set yourself a deadline. You got to write so many words a day. And then you check and check and check and check. And you've got to learn all the hiring of editors and proofreaders and a lot. But when it's a mission of passion, something you're passionate about, like this topic for me, it really feels good for it all to come together and finally have it out in the world where people can hopefully read it and get some use out of it.
You know, one thing I really like about your book, other than that my name is on the outside somewhere.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Other than that part, I had a little blurb there just to confirm your awesomeness, is any big decision, we talk about how to think about doing it right. Mm-hmm. And that's very helpful, even in retirement. Like when I think of retirement, it's good to know what like the top regrets are at the end of life. Sure. And then actually work backwards to try to minimize those, right? Mm-hmm. In your book, because it's not about how to do it right, but here are some big mistakes that can be very costly that you see very often in your practice, and you guys deal with thousands of people. That is sometimes a better way to approach it, to minimize those big mistakes that people see. That's what I like about it. I think that it means more in terms of making decisions sometimes than trying to figure out the right framework. So I appreciate that. Now, today, we're going to sum all this up to sort of build a little bit of a framework of what information should someone have and how should they go about the journey to making a good decision for them.
Yes.
So where do I start?
So you're doing good because you've listened to a couple of episodes now and you've got some information under your belt. You're thinking about all these things. We talked about that you should start early, start looking into this. You know, I wish I could have a class at age 50 for people to teach them long before so they know all the things to prepare for. But it's good if you even start at 64, kind of learning the basics and preparing. But one of the things that I share in the book is an easy way for you to start narrowing down the choices that you're going to have. So you've learned the basics about Medicare. You kind of understand how your original Medicare benefits work. And now you have to make your plan selections. You're going to either choose a Medigap plan and have a standalone Part D drug plan, or you're going to have a Medicare Advantage plan. This is assuming you don't have retiree coverage or TRICARE or something like that. The easiest way for you to start narrowing down which plan is going to work best for you is to start with your doctor's office. And when you do that, you need to ask very specific questions. The first question being, do you accept original Medicare? And most doctors will tell you yes. And that's good news for most people because I think we do worry sometimes, right? Are we going to lose our doctors? And when it comes to Medicare, it's sometimes hard to get established with a new provider if you weren't treating there before and you take Medicare because their practices get full. But if you've been treating with a doctor and now you're getting on Medicare, those doctors will normally stay with you and continue to accept Medicare for you. About 93% of all physicians accept Medicare.
Is there a reason you said original Medicare?
Mm-hmm. Yes, because original Medicare is the government benefits that you get, different from a Medicare Advantage plan that you get through a private insurance company.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so I'd like to say, do you accept original Medicare? If you said Medicare, your doctor probably is going to know that, but I'm going to give you some follow-up questions to ask as well that will ensure you get it right.
So what happens if you don't have a doctor that you've seen for years prior to Medicare? Should you plan on establishing, being accepted into their practice prior to Medicare so they just don't deny you?
They'll keep you?
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea. Actually, it's not a bad idea to go when you're 63, 64, get in the books with somebody so that when you come back and follow up, you're already in there and they'll probably see you. We do sometimes help our clients when they move from one state to another, or one city to another, especially if it's a small town and they're having a hard time finding a doctor that accepts Medicare. We can use Medicare as a directory for this, and we can just dial through and start asking questions and identifying physicians, because that's the hardest part, right? When you go to a new area and you're trying to establish the new provider. So actually, that's a really good thought. Check in when you're 63, 64, go see him once. But then also now when you can see this provider, even if you're somebody like my dad that never goes to the doctor and hates going to the doctor and never a sick day in his life.
Leave me alone. I'm okay.
Yeah, exactly. But if you go, you're going to have your Welcome to Medicare exam, which you can have done in the first 12 months of Medicare, and you can establish a baseline. And then thereafter, you can see that provider for an annual wellness exam once a year. It's a really good practice to have as you get older so that when something does happen and go wrong, you're not flying blind trying to find a physician. You actually have someone that you can go to that knows a little bit about you already.
Okay. All right. So that's a good first step. So how else do we go about figuring out a good decision for us?
So what you want to know about, the doctor says yes to the question, do you accept original Medicare? Now you know that doctor will accept any Medigap plan that you sign up with, as long as it's a Medicare supplement or Medigap plan, same thing. It could be with Blue Cross or Humana or United Healthcare or a million other companies. It doesn't matter. You don't have to say, doctor, do you take my Blue Cross? You just say, do you accept original Medicare? Doctor says yes, your supplement's going to pay just fine and you won't have any problems there. So now you've identified that Medigap is one route for you that would work and you'd be able to maintain that doctor. And
that's interesting because that would confuse if you said, do you take Blue Cross Medigap? They'll just hear Blue Cross and they may not. So it's interesting. Yeah.
And they might hear Blue Cross and they might confuse it with Blue Cross that they accept on the ACA plan.
Exactly.
On an under employer. So you don't want to go that specific. Just do you accept Medicare? So you'll know, okay, Medigap is a route I could go. And then the next question is, do you participate in any Medicare Advantage plans? So this is a little tricky because the doctor can accept a Medicare Advantage plan and bill out of network if it's a PPO without participating in. You want to identify which Advantage plans the doctor is in the network for so that you're going to be able to see that doctor at the lowest possible copay if you were to choose an Advantage plan. And here in DFW, we have scores of them. So it's great if your doctor says, well, we participate in XYZ and ABC Medicare Advantage plan. Now you've taken scores of plan options and you've narrowed that down to 2 to start looking at.
Because you may not even do a Medicare Advantage, but you still want to, you're getting your ducks in a row.
you're getting your ducks in a row. Or he might say, nope, I hate those. I'm not going to participate in Medicare Advantage, and might tell you a reason why. And then you'll say, okay, great. If I want to do a Medicare Advantage plan, I'm going to have to change my doctor. So you're just gathering information that kind of gets you a little further down the path to what kind of coverage you ultimately are going to go with. Okay. And very occasionally, you'll find a doctor that only takes Advantage plans and no longer accepts Medicare itself, which is rare. But it does happen sometimes because the Advantage plans compensate the doctors in those cases more highly, I'm guessing, than they get from original Medicare. And you would want to know that too, because then you might not go the Medigap route if you want to stay with that doctor. And all of this just helps you narrow down all the many choices that you have.
I'm going to ask a dumb question. If you have your primary that does this, when you get to specialists and things like that, do I have to worry about it? As long as my doctor takes original Medicare, I have a Medigap, am I going to start having to limit my field if I have to get referred to a specialist, or they all pretty much accept this stuff?
You want to ask your specialist the same questions, especially if you're considering the Medicare Advantage route, because we typically find most of the doctors say yes to Medicare, and with original Medicare and a Medigap plan, you never have to do any referrals. Okay. So the only time a referral would be necessary is if that specialist requires them. Like, he won't see people unless they come in off a referral, but it's not your plan requiring it. So that's one thing about doing Medicare and Medigap is it's a lot easier in terms of referrals and prior authorizations and some of the hassles that you have with insurance companies. You just don't find those as often when you go that route. But a Medicare Advantage plan, I would tell you, if you have one doctor, I'm probably going to be able to find a couple of Medicare Advantage plans that you could see that doctor on. If you have 7, it's going to be very difficult that I find one plan where all 7 happen to be in the network. And then beyond that, there's things that you don't know. For example, there's a major carrier here in the DFW area that has 2 different sub-networks inside the main network. And doctor in sub-network A won't refer to sub-network B. And if you were not an insurance agent that knows this, you're just calling on your own, the doctors say, yes, we're in the network. Unless someone on the staff thinks about telling you that, you could find that, yeah, both doctors accept the plan, but Dr. A won't refer to Dr. B. So it is more tricky when you go that route.
Okay. I'm sorry I derailed you, but okay. So, and start to understand on Medigap and Medigap Advantage or Medicare Advantage. Mm-hmm. Okay, now we're narrowing it. Where do we go next?
So you're going to then, let's say you're still a little torn, okay? You're going to look at prices and some considerations. One thing about Medigap plans is they cost more upfront, but you have less decision-making on the back end. That's very predictable expenses. If you do a Plan G, your total out-of-pocket for the year is $198 on a Part B deductible, and after that, it covers everything. So that's very predictable. So now we're going to consider health conditions. If you're someone that has lots of different doctor's appointments and you're always going to pay a copay on those things on an Advantage plan, a Medigap plan with a higher premium still might be cheaper for you because you're not paying a copay every time you go into the doctor. So next thing you're really looking at is kind of your medical usage. If you look at an Advantage plan, you want to look at what some of those copays are. Some plans you might find have a $0 primary care doctor and a $20 specialist. And you might find another plan that's $25 for the primary care and $60 for the specialist. So all those different little copays that happen with Advantage plans, you want to look through them carefully and think to yourself, how often have I gone to the doctor this last year? Okay, that would have been 4 appointments. And so I know that on top of my plan, I'm going to pay $60 times 4 in copays. And you're going to have some additional back-end spending on that Advantage plan. So lower premiums up front, more copays on the back end. And so when you're looking at usage-wise, we just naturally find that a lot of really healthy people gravitate toward Advantage plans because they hardly go to the doctor. They want some coverage. They don't anticipate going a lot. And they don't mind paying a little bit as they use their benefits.
And this is where we're making decisions for who we are today, first off, right?
Absolutely. Right? That's right. So you have to think about where you might be tomorrow, of course. But the reality is a lot of people have a hard time focusing on that. And so sometimes you can't talk them out of the Medicare Advantage, but you can at least let them know, hey, these are copays that you could incur. If you're going to have a hospital stay, you're going to pay $200 a day on this plan for 7 days. And so your maximum expenditure on that is $1,400. That's a risk you don't have with Medigap, but hey, you're saving the premiums. Are you the kind of person that would take the money you would have spent on a Medigap plan and put it in your bank account for a rainy day on your Advantage plan? Those are all the considerations that you need to take into account.
This is where I think we get tired head with comparing apples to apples.
Yeah.
I think you make a really good point of it's easy to choose what seems right for us today, not understanding the exposure later on, potentially. I don't know how you simplify that. Obviously, some has to do with what your conditions are. I imagine you have to do sort of a self-assessment, not just how healthy you are today, but what your medical history is, what your family history is, those type of things.
Yeah, you've got to think about all of those things and ask yourself, am I going to be okay with this coverage now? And I'm going to be okay with this coverage if I have a year where I'm not quite as healthy. Do I have the funds set aside to afford that? Advantage plans do have an out-of-pocket maximum to protect you from spending beyond a certain limit. In 2021, the maximum that is $7,550. So an Advantage plan could set an out-of-pocket maximum at $7,550. That's the most that you would spend on the Part A and B services, but then you're also going to have drug copays. And so if you're someone that absolutely could never come up with $7,500, that's probably not going to be a good plan for you. And going with one that costs a little more upfront, but is going to have less on the back end might be a good fit. You might also be in the alternate boat where a Medigap plan will break the bank because you're squeezing your budget to afford, you're living on Social Security. Well, in that route, maybe an Advantage plan is a great fit because it's what you can afford. It's going to have you, and it does have a cap on it, whereas original Medicare by itself doesn't. And so you're evaluating all of those things to kind of see which one fits you. And we have clients that love both types of policies. So I do a lot of warning about Advantage plans because I've seen the things that surprise people over the years. But we have a bunch of clients that are on them that are quite happy, but they also know what the risks are. And so when something happens and they incur a bill, they're not freaking out about it because they knew that going in. They did their research and we shared with them what some of those risks are, and they're fine with it. And so you might be as well. There's also things about Advantage plans to consider, like they can throw in little extras like dental and vision and hearing or a free gym membership. Those are all nice things. Don't pick your plan just based on that, because you can run out and say, well, Sally from Sunday school, she has this plan and she gets the free Silver Sneakers membership and it's amazing. And I want that plan. Well, if your doctor isn't in that plan, you've just made a mistake. So research is the name of the game here before you nail down the plan. And knowing that if you choose an Advantage plan right out of the gate, you can always switch from one Advantage plan to another. But going backwards to original Medicare and then getting a Medigap plan will require health underwriting to get that Medigap plan in most states. So you may not be able to get back to that if you develop a health condition down the road. That means you're going to be in the Medicare Advantage world for the long term.
Which is likely okay, but it limits your options later on potentially because of the underwriting.
Yeah.
Just because you mentioned it, and we just spent $1,600 on some dental work for my wife, she just has a bad mouth. There's a lot of money in that mouth. But I have my things too. But how do people in over 65 typically deal with dental and vision?
Yeah. So there are individual plans that you can buy on the market. If you were to go on Google and just type in senior dental plans or individual dental plans, you'll see a ton of companies that pull them up. I have a YouTube video about this that kind of walks you through the different types of plans. There's really inexpensive ones that are just a discount. You go to certain doctors in a network and they've agreed to lower their prices for everybody that has this ID card. So that's one route you could go. And then there's full coverage plans that might cover up to $3,000 a year. Those are going to cost quite a bit more. We offer a couple of different individual dental plans so that people have them. But I also have people who will say, I have not a bad mouth and I don't incur a lot of dental. And so I'm going to save the money and I'm going to pay cash, or I'm going to use money in my HSA to pay for my dental expenses. And so that's another area, again, where you have to kind of look at your history. And if you know that dental things just crop up for you more often than not, getting a full coverage dental insurance plan is definitely a good way to go. If you're going the Medigap route, you have to get that separate. If you were thinking of Medicare Advantage already, then you could look for a plan that your doctor's in the network for and then find the one that he accepts that has the best dental package built in. A lot of times the built-in dental might be just preventive in nature, but we see them sometimes where they'll also cover things like fillings or dentures. And you could look to see if an Advantage plan has enough coverage for you.
I have a very good mouth. So I don't have dental coverage, but I make it up in mountain bike injuries. I don't know if I've ever done this, but in terms of how do you make the decision, in my mind, it seems pretty obvious. And that is to utilize a firm such as yours to help walk through the process to think through it, because it's so complicated. And one, bluntly, because Boomer Benefits and other firms like yours, but you work in nationwide, except for 2 states really, is you help navigate through this entire process. And you don't cost anything because it's already built in whether someone uses you or not. Am I correct? And why would you not?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I often say I have a friend that is a property and casualty agent, and she handles all of my homeowners, my auto insurance, my umbrella policy, my business liability. She has that type of business. And she is a broker, and I don't want to go call 7 different companies for a quote on car insurance. I want her to do it and then just tell me, here's the one I think is going to be the right fit for you. And so the broker shops for it. And I don't pay any more for the policy that she ultimately helps me find, because there are commissions built into the premiums that you pay that will be paid to an agent if you use them, and that the insurance company will keep for themselves if you don't use an agent. So you pay it either way. But I think one of the benefits in the Medicare realm is brokers like us, we spend a lot of time helping you first understand your original Medicare benefits, because that foundational knowledge of understanding how your government benefits work first is really important. And people can get sidetracked by all the slick solicitations coming in their mailbox about this Advantage plan and that Medigap plan and this Part D plan. And they can kind of put the cart before the horse. A broker will really make sure that you have a solid understanding of the benefits you first have from the original Medicare, the government benefit, and then help you by asking questions, the questions that we know to ask, to help you identify which route sounds like it would be a better fit for you. And we can search for that based on your needs and your budget. But it's a conversation. We have to be on the phone with you for a few minutes to kind of get a feel for what you know and what you don't and what's important to you. And then we can start asking the questions that might help you narrow down to ultimately the plan that's best for you.
And I see those commercials on TV. And the problem is, it goes back to the tired head, is it's so confusing. You just go for what seems easiest. You end up not going so deep because it gets so confusing. And I would technically, Boomer Benefits is a broker, meaning that you have access to all the plans and you can evaluate and everything else. And there's a lot of people that are brokers, at least in the anecdotal experience I have from clients and others that have listened to the show that have used Boomer Benefit. A lot of people can be brokers. There's more of being a steward and a guide and really helping people make decisions that's very different.
Yeah.
For full disclosure, because I usually don't suggest anything like this, is I have no interest economically or otherwise in saying this. It's just, it makes total sense to me. And we have some history from co-clients that have worked on things. So anything else on making a good decision that we want to make sure we bring up?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Sleep on it overnight. So you're talking with us or you're talking with a broker, whoever you talk to, you kind of narrow down to what you want. If you have time to sleep on it for a couple of nights, do that, because you're generally going to come up with a few more questions that you want to get answered. Don't let anyone rush you into a conversation. And it's never necessary to meet in person. So one of the things I tell people now, because of being in COVID, we've seen some stress from people about, oh my gosh, how am I going to meet to get this done? A lot of this is done on the phone and online now. And so all of this is things that we can help you with by phone, and you don't have to let us into your home and breathe our COVID germs on you or or make you leave your house and expose yourself. So do the research, start early, and give yourself a little bit of time to sleep on it, so that those little questions, I always find I have them in the morning. So I think at night I go to bed and my brain is percolating on things, and things will occur to me and I have questions about things in the morning. That's good. You want to give yourself an opportunity to do that so that you can get all those questions asked before it's time to sign up.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining us in the club a few days ago to answer questions. That was awesome.
You bet. My pleasure.
Thank you for dropping some major Medicare knowledge throughout the month of September. And I want to wish you well on your international book tour that I'm sure the Learjet's gassing up outside. And I have no doubt we'll chat again. Thanks so much for helping us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So we're here at one of my favorite times of the month, the last week of the month, not only because I get excited about the new month, new possibilities, but I also get to chat with you and Beachwalker, the head retirement coach of the Rock Retirement Club. BW, how are you?
Roger, good to talk to you again.
So what is on our plate, Coach? You're like a counselor too, so I'm a couch. So what do I need to work on?
So September has been Personal Development Month in the RRC. We talked about things like life meaning, lifelong learning, volunteering. And so what I wanted to talk to you and your listeners about today is the theme, don't let your life shrink in retirement.
So what do you mean by
often
shrink?
When we retire, what I mean is too often, I think when we retire, we think our best years are behind us. And that's just not true. I can tell you as a relatively recent retiree, that's definitely not true. But we can fall into some patterns that are bad for us. One thing, we no longer see those work friends that we have. And so our social contacts start to shrink. We don't try as many new things. We don't try new sports or new hobbies like we should. Some of us, we go to the same places on vacation. We go to the same place every year. We don't visit new places. We stop trying to learn new things. We no longer need to learn, when we're on our jobs, we learn new things all the time. We have to. And you retire and you just stop learning new things. We just get too comfortable in our routines and our day-to-day activities, and our life just shrinks.
So I have a question for you on that. I was on a call with a client who we've been honored to walk the journey from retiring, selling their house, and they're full-time RVers. And they check in literally from the road. It's like, where's Carmen Sandiego? And they were in the Wyoming area. And he spent a half hour listing all of the hikes and the experiences that they've had since the last time we checked in. And I literally am tired just from listening to them. So they're definitely...
Well, you get to live vicariously. I love it.
I had him send me the list because he's a very organized guy. So he sent me the list. So I'm logging all these cool places selfishly. But my question to you is, a lot of times in early retirement, it's the opposite. We expand because we're excited and everything else. How do we avoid shrinking when we're our future selves and we're a little bit more overall the experiential things?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of us retire with sort of that bucket list. And so we get frenetic about it and go do all these new things. But then we sort of, after a few months of that, most retirees settle in. And that's the part that I think we have to watch out for. The beauty of this is that we can really control this. It doesn't take a lot of effort to grow your life, not let it shrink, but actually grow it. Part of it is just attitudinal. We don't want to be satisfied with where we've gotten in life.
Which is frustrating because we're always pursuing being satisfied and happy, quote unquote.
Yes. And what I want us to do is I want us to always strive towards what's next and the new us. In other words, just don't fall into that almost death trap of being happy with what we've achieved and looking back with pleasure and fondness. No, I want us.
Well, we can do that. Forward. Come on. We can do that a little bit.
Oh, sure. But you can't do it on the couch.
You can't rest on your laurels, exactly. Literally.
I want you trying new things. I want you not going to the same old standby restaurants that you go to because you've grown comfortable there. I want you to go try the hot new places in town. I want you to take risks with your activities. Start some new sports or new hobbies that push you. And I don't necessarily mean physically. It may be mentally, but something to challenge you. Learn some new languages. Just don't play the game of life safe. Go out, make new friends, join new groups, continue to grow and evolve. That's what we mean by personal development in retirement. And it's just so important to having the best retirement you can have.
You know what the lack of personal development looks like to me in my head?
What's that?
Is I've had conversations like this, like little bells go off in my head when I'm sitting at dinner or on the patio with a group of friends roughly my age, and everybody starts talking about either what hurts or their medications. That is my canary of, okay, I need to start thinking forward and what is possible rather than what is constraining me.
Yeah. Need to get some younger friends too, right?
Well, I mean, I think but it's a good warning sign. But where I was thinking about golf just the other day, I think on the last show I mentioned it. I'm not that great a golfer and had never been, but my wife and I have been playing for a couple of years now after getting back into it. And my scores are consistently about 10 points better. But I'm not satisfied. I don't feel like, this is awesome now. I still get frustrated. And I have to remind myself that I still have to acknowledge the progress, right? That's the looking back part, but still not be satisfied. There's a balance there, I imagine.
Yeah, and that's a great attitude to take to your retirement life, which is, yes, be grateful for what you have. And that's important to have an attitude of gratitude, but always strive, have new goals, set new goals for yourself, both in your golf game and in your life, both emotionally, intellectually, physically. Set those new goals and then develop plans to achieve them, just like you did when you were 20 and you were maybe starting college. And when you got out and you got that first job and you set up career goals for yourself. Well, retirement is a new phase of life. So you need to do the same thing in retirement.
And obviously, and we've had guests on the show that talked about this personal development in all sources, right, BW, that these are the things that defend against Alzheimer's and dementia and all the natural degrading of things in life. These things won't prevent them necessarily, but they defend against them.
Exactly. All of the research that's being done now on longevity is showing us that even more important than those habits that we all know. You don't smoke, you don't over drink what you're eating, you get plenty of sleep. Those are all important, but the most important aspect to longevity, all the studies show, is your attitude in retirement. Are you growing? Are you evolving? Are you living a life of meaning and purpose? So if you can do that and continue to evolve, you'll live a nice, long life and you'll enjoy it.
I'm going to share an experience that sort of creates this aha moment for me. And I think this sort of represents what we don't want to lose. As you hear, I want to know if you have one of these. So I'll give you two real quick. One was when I remember working with a trainer, and this was 10 years ago, and we were doing jumps onto boxes, right?
Yes.
And how high can you vertically jump? And it was progressing. And one day we were in the gym and he put some boxes on and I just looked at him. Well, that ain't going to happen. That blah, blah, blah ain't going to happen. And I literally was like, I can't do this. And I made some feeble attempts. And then I don't know what happened. I just said, okay, he's not going to let me out of this. So I jumped and I did it. But internally, it went from that is not possible to holy cow, I just did that. And I think that's like the experience you don't want to lose.
Yeah. You surprised yourself because you challenged yourself. You weren't afraid to risk making that jump.
I was afraid, but I did it anyway.
But you did it anyway. And that's perfect. I think that's a great story for this. Now, I have the other side of that, which is, and especially when we start talking about some of the physical things, what you can do physically is going to change as you age. This is life. But it doesn't have to diminish what you do. I was in a doctor's office a few years ago and was talking about how I had this tendonitis in my shoulder that I couldn't get rid of. And I didn't want to take 3 months off from playing golf to let it heal. And he said, well, what are you doing at the gym? And I said, well, I do the military presses, the overhead press. He said, well, why? You're 50. Stop doing that. And I thought, oh, okay. And I stopped doing it. And guess what? My shoulder quit hurting. So yeah, we have to make modifications, but we still have to challenge ourselves.
After my third knee surgery, my orthopedic said the same thing. Stop doing box jumps.
Yeah. My box would be about 8 inches high if I tried to do box jumps now, I think.
I think that's a great message. And this is the stuff I love hearing in the club, what people are actually doing to really rock retirement. That's the beauty part, is seeing your peers and their experiences.
We had a meetup just last week, and the ideas, the different things people were doing to stay vibrant and active and pursue their life meaning was just overwhelming to me to listen to all the stories. So you're right.
Yeah. Well, thanks, BW, and I will see you in the clubhouse.
Talk to you in October.
On your marks, get set.
And we're off to set a little baby step we can take in 7 days to work towards rocking retirement. I think this personal development topic is crucial. We are made to work, to be striving towards something. It doesn't have to be for money. It can be striving to play the guitar, striving in volunteering, learning something. So in the next 7 days, I would love you to make sure you're examine yourself. Are you doing something to expand yourself, develop yourself? And if you want to share it, go to rogerwhitney.com/Ask Roger. But that's your challenge. Thanks so much for listening to the show. It is September. It's beautiful weather here in Fort Worth, Texas. My wife and I are golfing today, actually, as soon as I'm done with this. So I'm excited about that. That's one of the things that we enjoy to do together. I feel like I'm developing there. My score is getting better, but it is frustrating. And I'll tell you the hard part of development, personal development, I'll use golf as an analogy, at least for me, is you have to practice. Well, the whole point of practice is you're not good at it to begin with. So it's frustrating. We tend to want to give up frustrating things because they're frustrating. I'd rather go do something easy. Oh, I can figure this out. That's fun. But it's the practice. It's getting through that frustration. That is a lot of why a lot of personal development doesn't happen, because by definition, it should always be hard. I think of my golf score, and we really just started it 3 years ago after a big hiatus of decades. It's gotten better, but I don't feel any better because I'm always frustrated because I want to be better than I am at that point. And so there's a balance there, but we got to make sure we embrace that frustration and not make it a negative thing. So that's what I'm talking to myself right now, really, to tell myself that, but hopefully it helps you too. And I'm so excited to spend this time with you, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Hey, it's time for that all-important disclaimer. We so appreciate you listening to the show and love your questions and love the teaching that we're able to provide here. And actually, it helps us too. But remember, you're not our clients.
Not love it if you took advice from us on the show.
We would not love it if you took advice from us on the show. Realize this is helpful in education. Talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor before you make any decisions.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.